Welcome back to Good Day Kingston. On today's episode, we'll be speaking with Elaine Fiore, Chair of Kingston's Board of Selectmen, to take a behind-the-scenes look at town meeting. Now, just a reminder, Kingston's upcoming special town meeting will be held on Tuesday, November 13th at 7:00 p.m. in the auditorium at the Kingston Intermediate School. Before we jump into today's show, I just wanted to thank the many viewers who sent us feedback on our first two episodes. Janet, I'm so glad that you learned some interesting things. Yanina, I'm so happy to hear that Pack TV and coffee is part of your morning routine. And Rob, I couldn't agree with you more. Superintendent Blackwood is very nice. Now, many consider town meeting to be the purest form of democracy. Over the course of the year, Kingston's many boards and committees meet to carefully debate and discuss the budget, economic development opportunities, our schools, and much more. Town meeting is your chance to debate, discuss, reject, or accept these decisions made by these boards and committees. It gives you, the voters, a tremendous amount of power and a system that leans heavily on your voice in this system of checks and balances. Elaine, I'm so happy that you could make it today. I know how busy you are, especially with town meeting just around the corner. So it's great to have you. This is your first time on Good Day Kingston, and I'm excited to talk about town meeting. I think a lot of folks who attend town meeting or who know about it on the peripheral often hear complaints that it goes, 3 nights, 4 nights, 5 nights. But for a number of people in town, yourself included, town meeting's a 3 or 4 month process. Correct?
Correct. It actually starts right after the close of the fiscal year in July. There's a lot of elements that make up the town meeting. One of them, the most important one, is the budget process. That really starts in July and August, and predicting what costs will be a year from now. So there's over 70 tasks that need to be accomplished to get to town meeting. And department heads are involved, boards and committees are involved. It is a town effort to get to a town meeting date.
Now, if you can remember back to a time before you were on the board, and before you were on Finance Committee, because you were on Finance Committee before that, what was your perception of town meeting when you were there simply as a resident and a voter?
Well, I came from Boston, so to me, it's exciting. It is. You get to actually say your piece, and sometimes it makes a difference. And you get to hear other points of view as well. So I like the whole dynamics of it. I think it's great.
And how long have you been a resident of Kingston?
Over 40 years.
Over 40 years. And in those 40 years, can you pinpoint one article from a town meeting that was either the most pivotal or the most proud of that you are as a resident and as a voter?
I would probably say being a sewer customer, getting municipal sewer in the town of Kingston has made a difference. And right now it's one of the top priorities of having us continue with economic development. And the night that was actually voted and funded on town meeting floor, it affected a few people at that time, but then it has grown to be a valuable asset to the town. And
it sounds like it'll continue to be a valuable asset as we look to grow new businesses, encourage new businesses to come to Kingston, and also bring things like the proposal from the last town meeting at the mall. I mean, bringing in something like hotels and condos to South Kingston.
Exactly, because the sewer line is basically exits 8, 9, and 10. So anything right off those exits would serve the town well.
Who would have thought that the single vote to transform the town could be something like sewer?
Exactly, exactly.
So let's jump into this. What's the absolute first step in planning a town meeting or a special town meeting?
For a town meeting, it's just getting all the processes in place. We have to have a town meeting each and every year because we do have to set the budget for the following year. Special town meetings, if there's a need, and for this year, for November's town meeting, it started off with the union contracts. If we had finished any union contracts, then we would definitely have a special town meeting, and then you try to take advantage of having a night of town meeting and add what other articles may make it worthwhile.
Because oftentimes there's funding that needs to be allocated prior to that next town meeting that we are required to have.
Correct. The union contracts, they run 3 years, and right now we're talking police and fire. And at this town meeting, we're going to be funding 2 years of a 3-year contract. It took a while to get everything in place where we had a lapse with town administrator. So the unions, we've worked well together to come to an agreement, and we have to fund 2 years of that, so.
No, I like to think of the selectmen as being a very important part of town meeting, but my understanding is that town meeting could actually happen if none of us were able to attend. Who are the key players that have to be there in the room in order to make town meeting happen?
Besides the audience of 100 people.
Did you guys get that? You need to be there. We need at least 100 people for this special town meeting.
It would be the moderator and town clerk, and I would say the check-in at when you come in and check into your particular precinct. You don't need the selectmen, you don't need the finance committee, you don't even need legal counsel. So the authority of town meeting is under the purview of the town moderator, so that position is the key.
Okay, so it's been decided. We have union contracts, we have these other items that need to be funded, and we can't wait until the annual. What's the next step? We've decided we're having a special town meeting. Now what?
Now you get in touch with the boards and committees and see if anybody has any additional articles that they want to add on to. And we try to be sensitive for a special to try to keep it to one night. This we're having in the middle of November. And the reason why it's November is because we need money to pay for some of these articles. Again, the union contracts is a prime example. And we have to wait until the Department of Revenue certifies our free cash. And that's at the end of the close of each fiscal year, which is June 30th. Shortly after that, the finance departments work with Department of Revenue, and they certify free cash, which is excess revenue after the close of the fiscal year. It could be we got more income than we expected, we didn't spend as much money, we could have gotten grant money, so the whole thing that makes that up. But that's the key, is getting the money certified first, and then of that money, what is available to spend.
Okay, so that's the opening of the warrant is what we're doing, I guess, at this point?
We're developing the warrant, waiting to see what available money there is.
Understood, okay.
And so department heads are involved. Then, since this is really a shorter window of time that we have to work with, town council gets involved. They vet the articles to make sure that the language is appropriate. The department heads provide the language to the selectman's office. Then that language is vetted, because we want to make sure that what we submit at the end of the session to the state, to the Attorney General's office, that they accept our articles, because that's whole part of the process as well, that when we have our town meeting, those articles, most of those articles, like the zoning and things like that, go to the Attorney General's office to make sure they're legal. So we would hate to go through a whole process and find out, oh, by the way, these aren't valid. So legal counsel vets them all, and we discuss them at our selectmen's meetings. We put them in a specific order. Usually we try to do the financial ones first, those that do require the quorum of 100 people. And our goal, as you know, is to post the warrant now a month before town meeting.
And can we, segue just briefly into, there's a new group in Kingston. It's a citizen-led group that's been making recommendations over the last few weeks. They've been meeting for months, just trying to figure out how we can improve the process at town meeting. One of those recommendations that they had made that we were able, as the Board of Selectmen, to answer to was to publish the warrant article 30 days in advance. But this is a group of citizens who are looking at the way town meeting has been running and trying to find ways to improve it, making recommendations to the Board of Selectmen, but also to the moderator.
Exactly. Exactly, and I was able to attend a few of those meetings, and it's great. It's people on both sides. Some who think town meeting is too long, others who think that town meeting is too short. So it was a good mix of people, and what I enjoyed the most is it's an ad hoc citizen committee. It's not sanctioned by the town or the Board of Selectmen, which allows better discussion, because you don't have to follow the rules of open meeting law, and which means that you can talk about anything you want to. Anything that happens to come up that night at the meeting, you can talk about. You don't have to worry about whether or not it's been posted. So it was a good free flow of information. They came to our meeting, and we had our tasks that they gave us, and like you said, fortunately, we were able to implement them all before town meeting.
That's great, and hopefully, I mean, this ad hoc group will continue to meet and make recommendations, because as with everything in town meeting included, we should always be striving to be better, to strengthen what it is that we're doing, so it's a better experience for residents, and so that we don't struggle for a 100-person quorum. Maybe the streamlined process or the improvements will encourage more folks to come out and weigh in on how their money is spent, how the town does business, and ultimately make for a stronger Kingston.
Well, that's it, and what they had suggested, when you look at it, it's makes a difference, but it's simple. As far as when we post the PDF of the warrant, it's searchable. Great. A shorter URL so you can add it to a favorites, so you can just pull it up at any time. So small things like that, they don't cost money, and we're able to implement them.
Yeah, and hopefully, again, I do sincerely hope that they continue to meet, because the recommendations that they made to the board and the recommendations that they made to the moderator, as you said, were simple and hopefully something that will expedite the process, so that we're not sitting for 4 nights and as was the case earlier this year, having to dissolve town meeting due to the lack of a quorum.
And one thing also that we've done differently, not differently, but it listened to people, was the descriptions for each article. I actually met offline. It was Tammy Murray, Jess Kramer, and Jean Coleman. And they, except for Tammy, had never seen the warrant before. And I says, okay, let's look at the articles. Do you understand it by the description we had? They gave their input, and those are the types of things that we can always improve upon with residents who are involved. And
last night's Board of Selectmen meeting is another great example. I mean, the board was able to discuss each warrant article during the voting process when they weighed in, and there were residents in the room who then gave their 2 cents on the articles that they thought they could add to, or at least share their point of view to inform us as we made our votes. And yeah, and as you know, as being a member of the board, that's our goal this year, is to have as much information out there as possible before we get to town meeting, because it's actually pretty much, once the warrant is set, it's about 2 months time that it takes to prep everything and get it to town meeting, because town meeting this year is going to be May 4th. So if the residents wanted 30 days prior, that means we need to be done with everything by April 4th. And that means printed, vetted, all boards and committees' votes and recommendations that we may need. So it's, in essence, we need it done 2 months before town meeting. So the warrant's been written, the articles have been vetted, and now I think we're at the point where we were last night at our Board of Selectmen meeting, where the Board of Selectmen sits down and votes, and they make their recommendations on each article, and then we send it or submit it to Finance Committee, and they do the same? Yes. And that may also include the planning board, if there's any zoning articles, make sure that from their hearing processes that we get their votes in. Capital plan, they typically, for the annual town meeting, have the articles. So any board or committee, we like to put their votes in there as well when it's applicable to the article. And our goal now is to post 30 days prior. What's the legal requirement for posting? Special town meeting is 2 weeks, and an annual town meeting is 1 week. And it's funny you mention that, because people, some discussions have been, well, I want to submit something 2 weeks before town meeting. Well, with our goal being having it printed and available a month ahead of time, we need to have everything and anything done prior to that to make sure that everybody else has the opportunity, that late entries isn't really possible. And I know there was some discussion last night as well about the amendments that are made on the floor, and I think sometimes that encourages folks to come out, because if they know that there may be, something that's amended on the floor, they may be more apt to come and to be there for it. I think what we see, and I'm sure what folks in the audience see, is that if there's an article that pertains to your interest or your neighborhood's interest, folks come out in droves. Yeah. And it's the type of thing where you may come in for one and you may leave. There's opportunities to reconsider. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think that's something that oftentimes folks learn after the fact, and something that would be useful to someone who may be attending for the first time.
Definitely. When a vote is taken, depending on the article itself, for example, we'll use the budget. Once the budget has been set and voted at town meeting, typically you'll hear someone in the audience say, "I move to reconsider." What that does is allows the moderator to ask if anybody else wants to basically start the discussion all over again. Do you want to talk about this again, or is everybody fine with it? And if everybody is fine with it, oddly enough, you say, "No, I do not want to vote for reconsideration," and that locks in that vote. So reconsiderations can occur at any time from the night of the vote until 10 a.m. the next business day, the next morning. So if you leave in the middle of a nightly town meeting, unless it's reconsidered, someone could go in tomorrow morning and say, "Oh, by the way, I want to change the budget numbers," or "Oh, I want to talk about it all over again." So that is a mechanism that people use to lock in a vote and make sure that it's secured and can't be changed even later on that night. So it's a tool people use.
And I wish that I had thought of this previously. The point of today was to really do the behind-the-scenes tour, but now I'm thinking more, what would be useful for somebody who's either on the fence about attending town meeting or has never been and is going for the first time? Are there any pointers or tips that you'd give to a resident who just wants to come and check it out and see what it's all about?
Now that you're saying that, it would probably help if there was a tip sheet on what everything, I hand out, that people could understand the process better. Janet, the moderator, Janet Wallace, does a very good job explaining it ahead of time, but maybe it's something we should include at the front of our booklets that are handed out to give people a better understanding of the process, because to your point, if you don't know what reconsideration is, or that there's even a possibility that a vote can change by the next day, it could make all the difference in the world if you stay or not. And
I mean, that goes along with sort of what we're trying to do this year as a board, is really make a point to get the information out there as early as possible, to make it as digestible as possible, and to make sure that the folks that do attend, and our hope is that more and more and more folks attend, are as informed as possible, so that the decisions that they make are, based in maybe days of research or weeks of research, or having just tuned into a few selectmen's meetings to see what it is that they're actually reading and voting on once they get to the special.
Well, that's it. Last night, as you said, we did vote it, and there was a couple of people in the audience who participated, and that's what we want to do more of this year for the rest of the articles, is once the warrant is set, that each meeting until we get to town meeting, we'll cover a handful of them. And we'll invite the audience to come in and ask questions and discuss it with us. And actually last night we got through all of the articles for last night, and we even opened it up again that, if between now and our next meeting on October 30th, if you have any questions or you want to come in and talk about the articles again or something, let us know. And we're going to have a placeholder on the agenda. The last item on the agenda for October 30th will be the town warrant, in case anybody wants to come in and talk to us about it.
And I hope that folks do take advantage of that, because I think that in addition to the recommendations that were made by the ad hoc committee, this is something that could potentially save time and save frustration at town meeting, where folks are having these discussions when the opportunity existed maybe a week earlier or 2 weeks earlier to do it publicly on a televised platform and really get their questions answered in front of the entire town.
Right, and that's it. And the more you talk to people, the more you learn, and the more ideas that are generated just by brainstorming. And anything we can add to make it better, I know you are, the rest of the board, we're all open to any suggestions and ideas to make it a better process.
Okay, so we're at town meeting. There's 100 people. No, I'm sorry, there's 250 people because everybody's so inspired to come out and to share their voice. We vote on an entire warrant in one night. Where does it go next? Is it over? Do we wrap up, pack it up, and start thinking about the next town meeting, or what happens, once those votes have been cast?
At that point, the clerk's office is more heavily involved. They need to actually write up minutes of the meeting, and they do the submittals to the Attorney General's office, which typically takes a few months to get the responses back that, yes, Kingston, you're clean, all your articles that were submitted are fine legally. And then they update, if it's a zoning bylaw, they'll update the booklets on the websites. And then we either spend the money or implement the projects, or whatever the articles may be contained. And
that's it. And then when does planning for the next town meeting begin?
Well, if the town meeting, the annual, will be May 4th, the close of the fiscal year, June 30th. So in July, we'll start planning again for the next annual town meeting. But we've talked as a board about looking at just naturally having 2 town meetings. One in the spring to cover the financials and anything that may be time sensitive, and then another one in the fall, like we're doing now, to cover anything that may have come up since then, or things that, a zoning article, if it's not critical to be heard in the spring, to help prevent, hopefully, 45 to 50 articles at town meeting in the spring to make it a long duration for anybody. It used to be done like that over 10 years ago, that there was always a spring and there was always a fall. So we're even looking at something like that to break it up and be sensitive of people's time.
Yeah, and I know for a lot of folks, I mean, it's childcare, it's work, it's obligations outside of town meeting that really prevent them from going. So I think childcare is something that the board has tried in the past successfully and unsuccessfully, depending on the availability of childcare. But it's nice to know that those things are being taken into consideration, that the value of residents' time is being taken into consideration, and efforts are being made to streamline the process so that it's not 45 articles and 4 to 5 nights, but maybe split evenly and done in a fashion that gets us out of there in 2 nights.
Well, that's it. And you talk to the people who do attend town meeting and just generally around town, people feel the purest form of democracy is town meeting, and we don't want to lose it. We want it to work for as many residents as possible, and again, like we've talked, we're open to suggestions and to do whatever we can to make it easier for those who attend and get the 250 people.
And it is fun. It's fun speaking with folks that don't live in Massachusetts or that don't live in New England, because it almost seems like this concept of town meeting is very foreign. I don't know if you've had that experience, but when you talk about it, it's almost this cute, quaint thing, and it's unique to our region. And it would be great if we could maintain that New England style town meeting in a way that does encourage participation, that does inspire voters to come out, and that does ensure that it's not a small group of residents that are dictating, or sorry, not dictating, but deciding how the town spends its budget, because that small body is representing a much larger body, and the more folks that we can get into the room to weigh in on how our schools are funded, how our roads are maintained, et cetera, the better.
And that's a good point, because everything we do in preparation for town meeting, all the votes are recommendations. It is the citizens, it is the people at that meeting who decide whether it goes forward or not.
They can reject, they can accept.
Right. And that's where we've all agreed we want to provide as much information so anybody can make an educated decision, and however it goes is how it goes.
Elaine, thank you again for joining us. That's all the time we have for today. But I hope that everybody watching learned a thing or two about what goes into planning and implementing town meeting. It takes a great deal of work from a large number of folks in town. And I sincerely hope, and I think I speak for Elaine as well in saying this, that you all join us on Tuesday, November 13th at 7:00 p.m. in the auditorium at the Kingston Intermediate School. And if you think of it, bring at least 99 of your neighbors so that we have a quorum, so that we can meet and that we can do town business quickly and try to get out in one night.